Well, hello, everybody, and welcome back to the March edition of the Guiding Light Rewatch Podcast. I'm Casey here with Candice and Matt, and this month we are, of course, celebrating Women's History Month in a way that feels especially close to the heart of Springfield. For 72 years, Guiding Light gave us some of the most unforgettable women in daytime television. Women who loved fiercely, led boldly, made mistakes, rose again, and shaped the very fabric of this show. From quiet strength to explosive drama, from matriarchs to rebels, the women of Springfield in front of and behind the camera were never just part of the story, they were the story. So, in this episode, we're looking back at the characters who defined generations, the performances that stayed with us, and the moments that reminded us why these women mattered so much then and still do now. So, whether you grew up with Springfield or you are discovering it all over again, join us as we honor the legacy, the power, and the heart of the women who kept the light shining for so many years. Well, Candice, how are you, dear? My love.
I, I'm doing wonderful, wonderful as always. Thank you guys so much for joining me today. And also to our listeners, hello. How are you?
As a listener of our very own show, I'm doing quite well.
That's
Matt,
good.
how are you? Matt, how you
I'm
doing,
doing
darling?
I'm doing well as well. Thank you for asking.
Oh, of course, it's my pleasure. Um, well,
Hmm.
I've got a question for you guys, like right off the bat, because I think we just need to get this out of the way. As hard as this is going to be, do you
hmm
guys have a favorite female character on the show? Like one that just rises above the rest for you?
I'm just gonna say this. It is hard to say just one when there's literally I have like a 20 women tie because they all are in their own unique way number one in certain categories that I have. So, if you're like favorite character who's a villain or, who had heart and soul. And it's like, it's really hard to just say just one person. You know what I mean? And so the answer for me is like, no, I got like, seriously, I'm like, mm-mm. You can't like, because then when you say like just the one, you're then going like, oh crap, no, it's this person. So yeah, that's why I said 20. I'm sorry.
Matt, what about you? Do you have one that rises above the rest, or are you kind of in the same boat as our Candace?
I thought of three,
Well, let's
and
hear
for
them. Don't keep us in suspense.
oh, of course, of course. Well, I kind of wanted to take it all the way back to the 50s and the 60s with Bert Bauer whenever she confronts Mrs. Clark about
Oh,
having
yes, your
her
middle school years. Yes.
yes, of course, about having an affair with her husband Bill. I believe it was Bill. And
Mhm.
then also, I absolutely love, love, love the Slut of Springfield, Reva Shane Lewis. That's that scene in the fountain. I think is just one of the best scenes of Guiding Light history. And then also, I also loved another Bauer who unfortunately left us. I think way too soon. I
Maureen,
know,
Maureen.
Maureen Bauer. If you want to say mother matriarch, I mean that's she's definitely one. But those are the three that I kind of thought of, and especially like with Maureen confronting Lillian, sort of almost
Mm.
very, whenever after finding out about the affair with Ed. I mean, oh, that is
Turned
also
us into some suburban joke.
yes, but
I
yes.
mean,
Mine for me, okay. So I do have one that kind of rises above the rest, even though, like, I'm kind of with Candace. Like, you've got 20 others that kind of all tie essentially. Um,
right.
but The one that has always rised above because I love a cunty older broad. So it's always been Alexandra Spalding for
Get
me.
on my head. Get out of my freaking head. Get out. Get out. Because I was about to say her name just now. I swear when it came down to me, I was going to say, you know what? This person.
Yeah, it's Alex. Like, whether it be Beverly, who I'm sure we'll get into more about later, like the country club. And I loved when it was Alexandra versus Mindy. Um, and then, of course, Marge Doucet. I mean, if you're going to follow it up by recasting Beverly when she decided to walk away from the show, I mean, it doesn't get much better than Marge Doucet. And just, oh, I mean, back to back, like, oh my God, I am at a loss for words right now. And that to me was just such a great character. And they don't make soap matriarchs like that anymore. They just, they don't do it like that anymore.
And see, I was going to pick her because here's the deal, folks. Alexandria Spalding wasn't just a woman. She was a powerhouse that you dare not cross because she had, like, okay. She was, in my opinion, quote unquote, the rich ice queen. You saw her strengths, but you also saw her cracks. But depending on who you were, she will turn cold, a la Mindy, a la Roger. She, even to her own family. Oh my God. She was about the respect, the control. Every Alex and Alan scene felt like a chess match. Because especially with Beverly and Chris, like we're going to do it like this. When Chris, who played, the original Alan, and Beverly, it was kind of a chess game a little bit. When you got to Ron and Marge Doucet, it was seriously like a continuing chess of like who is going to be literally the king or queen of the Spalding family. And she knew how to do it. She didn't wait for permission. She walked in, took her seat at the head of the table and says, I'm Alexandra Spalding. And what? She was more than just Alan's sister. Like, she was in a male-dominant world. She stepped into leadership. I mean, she could run the empire just as well, if I dare to say this, just as well, if not better than the men, because other men had issues. And Alexander was like, look, I know how to calculate power, and I know what to do and what not to do. She wasn't like Reva. She didn't cause chaos. She wasn't like Beth, an emotional wreck. But she just, child. She just really controlled the empire.
The character was even good whenever Joan Collins played
Joan Collins
for 6 months.
But I want to say it like this with Joan Collins, and this is not a dig, and I think this has always been a controversial topic. I know some people didn't like her version of Alexandra Spalding, but to me, and I'm just going to be completely 100, she did fit the mold of an Alexandra Spalding. Take a look at who she was playing for some plus years. She was Alexis. Okay? So to me, it was like Alexandra and Alexis was twins. They were cut from the same cloth. But she also, with Ron Raines, she held her own, and she still kept with Alexandra Spalding. Regardless of who, we've had 3 actresses who played the role, right? Each one of the actresses, she had moments where there was an emotional pull. But neither one, Beverly, Joan, or Marge, like, they had such a strong sense of the character, as well as a strong sense of, I am the woman. I am not the sister. I am not just some little thing on the piece of paper, I am Alexander Spalding. When I walk into the boardroom, look, I'm gonna tell you something. Anytime you saw Beverly McKenzie, Joan or Marge walk into a boardroom, right? And you already know the tent is tense. You could already feel it. But when they walked in, like, especially if they were unexpected, you can tell somebody was about to get read. Even if you're at the country club, mind your own business, you were about to be handled by Alexander Spalding. Because see, okay, I gotta do this. Because now, see, y'all just brought all this up. When Beverly's version was trying to out Mindy and Roger's relationship to Billy, when they were joking about Roger. And it was just the way that, if you take a look at that scene, it was calculated. Like, Beverly's method of acting is, okay, I'm going to reel you in, and then boom. Because when she said, no, it's your daughter, it was sort of like you wanted to laugh with her because it was kind of funny, but you knew what the situation was. And then with Joan Collins, she just comes in, especially with the women. She don't even shake anybody's hand. She just come in and look around like, okay, this is disgusting. She was like, oh, by the way, how's everything? You're doing a great job. Like, and then Marge would say, need I say more? So yeah, Alexander Spalding. Oh my God. I love you, Alexander Spalding. I want to be like you when I grow up.
Well, and I feel as though, like, what was so interesting about Guiding Light is in those 72 years, I feel as though we really explored every type of woman in every decade.
Uh-huh.
And that is what I really appreciated about the show because, there have been great characterizations on soap opera. But what I love about Guiding Light is because of like how long it was on, they really took the meaning of the town seriously in terms of creating such a diversified canvas. So we saw working women, we saw matriarchs,
Yep.
we saw the rich, we saw the poor, we saw the in-betweeners, we saw
Mm-hmm.
women who were nuts, women who were trying not to be nuts, women who were raising families, single women, women who were reclaiming independence. I mean, it was truly fully fascinating when you think about it because soap operas, are so embedded in their identity. And like we know, because we've all been longtime watchers on this podcast, so we know that each soap opera truly is different. But I will say Guiding Light was one of those rare shows, probably of only three soap operas I can truly think of, where every woman was different. And they lived off of those differences. Like nobody feels truly the same to me on Guiding Light in terms of
Mm-hmm.
women. They were just so well diversified
I
in
agree
their
with that.
background. Like
Even
I'm
okay.
like I was gonna say, on The Bold and the Beautiful, there's so many characters that are the same. Like, of course, we know their little stuff. Same with The Young and the Restless, same with Days of Our Lives, same with General Hospital, but like Guiding Light was just every woman felt so different from the next.
Took her. Matt.
Oh my gosh, I definitely agree with that. And I think that it's to be said through each generation, each decade. I feel as if there was more like matriarchs, more heroines, a more mix of sort of a stronger female character every decade. Let me ask you both this.
Mm-hmm.
What decade of Guiding Light do you think had the most impactful and or the strongest of heroines or of the best sort of decade for female characters?
I'm gonna say the 70s because the show really was pushing boundaries throughout the 70s. And I'm gonna include the first like sliver of the early 80s because I felt Guiding Light really leaned into like working women and diversifying them. and also pushing boundaries for what you were seeing on television at that time with women, like what you were seeing with Bert, which I mean, of course, even before that, Bert had kind of led the charge in making Guiding Light so groundbreaking, especially under Agnes Nixon's pen, which I'm sure we'll get to. But, just having like Nola and having Holly's marital rape. I mean, Guiding Light truly broke barriers in the 70s for women as women were really leaning into the feministic movement. And I think there's a time when you study that time of Guiding Light, there's something so special about the 70s and the early 80s, the very, very early 80s. It's just, I don't think anybody truly did it better for women than Guiding Light during that period of time and understanding feminism and understanding how to move women forward in this world.
I would have to say, if you're asking which decade truly belonged to the women of Guiding Light, I'm going to actually say it was the late 80s into the early 90s. The reason being is that you had Reva, Alexandria, you had Holly to agree because she was dealing with some stuff, and you had Vanessa all firing at once. And to me, they weren't just part of this story. Like, they weren't just there. They were the story. You know what I'm saying? Like, if we really take a look at certain things now, like what Casey just said, is you said around the 70s, you said, which was a transitioning year. It was an era. You brought up Holly, that was more emotional depth, but it still wasn't as in the late 80s, early 90s, it wasn't power driven arcs yet. You still had the whole kind of coming into your own type of era where they were dealing with heavy emotional stuff. They were. But in a way, the Holly story, while it was impactful, a lot of people overshadowed it with Roger and Ed. Which that's a topic we will definitely get into later on in our season. But to me, like I said, the late 80s, early 90s, because they weren't just love interests, they were the conflict, they were the decision makers. They, this was a show about women whose choices moved everything. Again, Vanessa having a child with Ross, and think about Vanessa. Vanessa was, I mean, I made a mention to Ice Queen. This girl was like, it was hard to read her, but she also led story. Reva. It was Reva. if what I just said doesn't fall on any character, because that I mean, then you had women starting to make decisions that they didn't need a man to do. And that was probably why I was so interested, because I was like, oh, okay, Harley is becoming a cop, and Alexander is still being Alexander Spaulding, and Reva's being Reva, and Blake, oh my God, Blake Mall, oh my God, Blake. Oh, Blake. I'm applauding. I'm just applauding because Blake was like one of my top 5 too. But no, I would say the late 80s and 90s, because you really got a sense of independent women standing up for what they wanted to do. And again, like I said, they weren't just love interests. They were, again, decision makers. They made decisions that was going to affect the canvas. And it was just, and everybody was talking about it as if these were real, again, this show made these characters like we were friends. We'd be like this, girl, did you see what Donna did today? No. What did Cassie do? Did Cassie go on the pole again? No, girl, no. Yeah. So that's my answer.
Matt, what about you, to turn the tables on you, dear?
Oh, well, I would probably have to say the middle of the 80s, whenever we got the introduction of so many great characters, like the Slut of Springfield, Miss Reva Shane. Also, oh my gosh, Roxy. And then you also
Mm-hmm.
had Trish, you had Beth, you had um, Miss
Samantha.
Sally, you had Maeve, you had Claire, uh, and also I believe Maureen introduced in the 80s as well?
Let me see.
Yeah,
I
because it
believe she
was
was. Yeah.
she was played by Ellen Dolan first, yeah.
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 Mm-hmm.
I mean, those, and these were just
Which talk
such.
about also like not to cut you off, but talk about another like back-to-back badass fucking recast. Because like Ellen
Right.
Dolan walked her shit too, but oh my God, so did the recast. Like Guiding Light, oh my God, the
They
recasts
knew
for
what they were
these
doing.
women were just as good. I mean, going from Ellen Dolan to Parker, it's like the recasts always hit too, just as good.
This show was not to be played with when it came down to the recast. Like, especially because we always say, again, I got to go back to my OJ, right? You take a look. Well, no, I'm going to give you the top three, like recast women wise, that the original made an impact. The recast made even more of an impact. Ladies and gentlemen, Judy Evans and Beth Chamberlain. No, they're
Yeah.
not on the show, but we're just giving a round of applause.
Yes, I agree.
That would have been hilarious if that happened. Like, they so
They just
crazy.
pop up. Like
They just pop up. You have, like you said, Eileen and Maureen. That rhymes. Hey. Then God, I'm blanking here. Wendy to Gina.
yes. One of my
I mean,
favorite
as far as
recasts ever.
and let me do this justice because we know there was another there was another Dinah previously. But I'm talking about grown up wise, like grown up wise. Okay. And also, actually, you know what? I take it back. Sherry Springfield, Liz Kiefer.
Yes.
I'm just Mike.
I just always think of like also um you know, as recasts were happening, one constant for the show I thought was like just how iconic Guiding Light
Mm,
could create a female villain. And like, of course, we all look back on I think Annie Dutton will always be the
yeah.
first female Guiding Light villain that comes to mind. But also, like, when we were talking about kind of when Matt asked us which era do we think defined women for the show, I immediately thought of like a story that I one time became like obsessed with looking into. And that was when Nancy Addison, may she continue to rest in peace, was Kit on the
Mm-hmm.
show. And she murdered Charlotte Bauer and she tried to kill Dr. Sarah McIntyre, which of course is one of the most iconic characters in Guiding Light history.
Yep.
Um, and I just thought that was one of like the first instances of really an iconic female villain on this show. And Nancy Addison was so brilliant. And what I enjoyed about her is the same thing I enjoy about Cynthia Watros is you can see them in so many different roles because of course we went on to love Nancy on Ryan's Hope as Jill. Um, and same thing with Cynthia, like we now love her as Nina on General Hospital. We loved her in Lost. And these are actresses who know how to turn it on, turn it off, give you something different, make you suspect somebody else is the psycho. I love that. And I know really like when it comes to Annie, um, and when speaking to recast, even though the story kind of got very wonky and it kind of broke down in the middle, I still think even Signe Coleman gave it her all. And I
Yeah.
think she can certainly be lumped in there with a good recast. I think the story just fell apart. Um, but yeah, I also really have a soft spot for our villainesses on Guiding Light as well. And I think there were also from time to time some really great recasts of some villainesses as well.
I agree. Also, like, I'm even going to take one because this actually is on my list. Like when I think of, again, the foundation of Springfield to how it grew, right? And there's somebody that is always left off the list, which when I say this character's name and when I say the two actresses who play, again, you talk about iconic in a way that you think about the era that this was in, and you think about, again, who I'm about to say, the character, and then who played the character. And that is Nurse Martha Fraser from the
Yeah,
60s.
iconic.
Okay. And when I say that you had Ruby Dee and Cicely Tyson, yes, I said those two names. They played against Billy D. Williams and James Earl Jones. Like that was Jim and Martha. That was the fact that, and I still get salty with some people about this because I do feel as though even though they were on for 2 years, like like what, 66, 68, right? The fact that, again, just alone those names that played a part in the Gone Light history, but as we're doing the show as female, so Cicely and Ruby Dee, you talk about the cultural impact these women have had in Hollywood, point blank, period. But the fact that they were a part of Daytime and that their character was a part of the influence of Ed Bauer. They knew Bert. Bert and they were all friends. They was at the Jiggly Wiggly Club, on a Wednesday night playing some poker. I don't know. But the fact that she was a representation of strength, courage, and she was, so I don't want to say grandma, but she was that figure that they would talk to. Again, small impact, but larger than life for me. So definitely, she was intelligent, she was grounded, she was emotional complex. I mean, she was literally Bert. I mean, she was, in a sense. She was the moral person that, she would tell you, Casey, Matt, babies, if you need to do this, maybe you need to do this without the hooping and hollering. And I think that's for the foundation era of Gone Light. Like you just said, you had women who not only looked out for, their family, because that was the world we lived in at that time. Everybody, you had housewives who was looking out for the family, and that was it. That was their only quote unquote role. But you started also seeing these women also slowly taking charge of their own health, also their marriage and their profession. And as each era and the group of females, because again, with the Bowers, we went through 6, 7 generations during the course of Gone Light's history. And each one of them had a trait that again stemmed from the OG. But with Martha, and I wish they would have focused more on that, because I could totally see the Boudreaux being a part of that family, like connected, like especially Mel, because Mel does remind me of Martha a little bit.
That would have been a really cool way to, I think, to connect history to like more present day, because I often think some soaps forget to do that. And Guiding Light used to do that a lot, but in like that last 2 years, that would have been a really creative, neat way to connect all of that together in such a full circle moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, it is quite amazing to think about like the very famous faces that got their start on Guiding Light, like you mentioned, Ruby and Cicely, but also Callista Flockhart, Allison Janney, Brittany Snow, Hayden Panettiere, Nia Long, Mira Sorvino, Sherry Stringfield, Cynthia Watros, of course, Jo Beth Williams. I mean, Guiding Light really the list really goes on. I mean, Guiding Light really launched the careers of these women who some have won Oscars, some have won Emmys, some have been on our favorite
Mm-hmm.
primetime shows and our favorite movies. Like, it is just really incredible to think about what a show can accomplish in 72 years, and Guiding Light did it all, especially for women. Again, it broke barriers for women. It was doing things for women behind and in front of the camera. And I think that's all attributed really to the fact that this show was created by Erna. And
Mm-hmm.
with her steady hand for so many years, she got everybody to wake up and understand this genre is by women for women. And I think that is such an important takeaway that nobody else but Erna put out there and established, because she is the mother of this genre. She is the creator of this genre. And I think her presence and the way she made history and shattered the glass ceiling, I think that reverberated throughout the entire show for as long as it was on.
Definitely agree with that. And I mean, we also, we're talking about characters, but also, like Casey just mentioned, to the female writers. Because if it's not on the page, it's not on our screens. So, like again with Erna, Agnes, Pam Long, Nancy, Millie, Jean, Phyllis, Jill. The list goes on and on, because you take a look at, like you just said, the 72-year run plus, and you think about all of the women that sat down with Erna in the room fighting for some of these storylines to go through, fighting with themselves while they're writing the stories that goes on TV. You just think about all of that up until the last page. And again, like you said, it's just all around amazing to think about. So shout out to all the women behind the scenes, including the directors, makeup team, hair, wardrobe, PR.
And also, like, having Daytime's very first female executive producer and Lucy Ferry Rittenberg.
Mm-hmm.
She produced the show for over 20 years. That's just incredible. Um, Again, Guiding Light was really pushing boundaries before anybody thought of pushing boundaries, and having
Mm-hmm.
her be there initially from 1954 to 1970, and then again from 1973 to 1976. Like, that doesn't happen. Like, Guiding Light really set and created the standard for everybody else. Um, of course, somebody that Matt already brought up into the conversation, I think we have to take time to honor Sharita Bauer, who defined
Yes.
Guiding Light for generations through her portrayal of Bert Bauer, a role she originated on radio and continued on television for over 3 decades. She was introduced as a young, headstrong housewife and evolved into the emotional center of both the Bauer family and the entire show. In her early years, Bert was flawed and impulsive, often pushing her husband Bill toward a lifestyle beyond their means. But over time, she grew into a woman of strength, compassion, and unwavering loyalty. She forgave Bill's deepest betrayals, embraced his other child as her own, and ultimately became a source of wisdom not just for her family, but for the entire community of Springfield. Bert's transformation mirrored the heart of Guiding Light itself. Guided by figures like Papa Bauer, she became the show's moral compass, offering advice, comfort, and steady love. Her relationships with her sons, especially Ed and Mike, and later with her grandson Rick, cemented her as the enduring symbol of family. Beyond story, Bauer's impact reached into real life. In the 1960s, Bert was at the center of one of daytime television's earliest social issue stories when she was diagnosed with uterine cancer. The story encouraged countless women to seek regular checkups and pap smears, saving lives and demonstrating the true power of soap operas to educate and inspire. Even in her final years, Bauer brought remarkable realism to the screen. And by the 1970s and beyond, Bert had become Springfield's beloved matriarch, often referred to as the true guiding light of the series. When Bauer passed away in 1985, the show honored her by keeping Bert alive off screen for a time before giving her a peaceful, proper passing, reflecting the deep respect held for both the actress and the character. Her legacy lived on through generations of characters, from Michelle, named in her honor, to the lasting imprint she left on the Bauer family and the show itself. Decades later, she was still remembered as Grandma Bert, the heart and soul of Guiding Light. So, Matt, like you brought in Sharita and Bert right away. So, like, what are your thoughts on? I mean, truly, if we let's just call a spade, the most iconic female character ever on that show.
Mhm.
Yeah, she was on. I mean, you mentioned how long was she on the show for? More than 30 years, yeah.
Yeah, more than 30.
Mhm.
I mean, that in itself is just the longevity of how impactful Guiding Light was, especially with its strong female cast. And whenever you think of the Bowers, and if you go and you do like a deep dive into the Bowers, I kind of automatically always think of Bert. You sort of see her face, and yeah, she was just such a beautiful character. But doing the history, seeing watching the scene where she's confronting Mrs. Clark about her affair with Bill, it's just how she played the scene was just so good because it wasn't just like I'm yelling at you, I'm angry with you, but I'm also angry at the situation. It was almost like cat and mouse. It was just like, you know, you're I'll forgive my husband, but you're a terrible, terrible person to continue what you did, thinking that I didn't know what was going on when I knew very well what was going on. Just showing that how strong she was.
Well, and I think also like just how Sharita allowed this character to push boundaries, with the uterine cancer, but also when Bert had her leg amputated, which mirrored
Yeah.
Sharita's real life amputation in 1983. I mean, we don't get stories like this anymore. To work in this leg amputation, of course, it was something that couldn't be avoided. Um, and certainly what Sharita went through couldn't be ignored. But to really work that in head on and show us the story of like Bert returns to town and she begins having this pain in her leg and really taking us through the motions like they did 20 years prior with the uterine cancer under Agnes Nixon, that was just something unforgettable. And again, Guiding Light pushing those boundaries, pushing the envelope of what daytime could offer to its audiences.
I mean, you think about that for a second. Is that when they did this story in '62, um, a lot of people, especially women, weren't really focused again on their health. They were concerned again about family, right? The priority is family, work, make sure everything is fine, and then it was you, because that's what housewives were quote unquote being known for. This actress and her character and the show and the writing, it helped millions of women realize the importance of regular checkup and pap smears screenings. To this day, because of Gone Light, and there was records being shown throughout the years, you had Lillian breast cancer storyline, Reva's cancer storyline, Lizzie's leukemia, right? And again, the awareness of health was such a focus point for the women as well as the men. But because I'll say this, I learned how to do a mammogram because of Lillian. And keep in mind, I was a little kid, but I knew, like, as I got older, like they would start teaching me this kind of stuff in school as well. And I'm always like, oh yeah, God like told me to do this. It was like, oh, they was like, yeah, a TV show taught you that. And I was like, no, because the character had cancer. So yeah, I was, it it always amazed me about that too. And I think that's something else that's missing is how soaps would always educate people at home, the viewers, on certain things. And again, with Bert, I mean, you just brought up one of the most emotional well, whenever I think of Bert, I think about how she handled, her family, especially her daughter. Lord Jesus. I'm sorry, Bert. I'm so sorry. That girl was wild. I know. But I think about two iconic moments is when she woke up from surgery and her sons were in the room with her. And she said that she still could feel her leg. And you would think somebody would feel the embarrassment and the emotions and everything. It was the way Sharita played it, because it was sort of the, kind of confusing state of, well, if a limb was removed, how come I still can feel it? And also making sure that her children don't see her as somebody without a body part, but instead she's still the same person, if not even stronger. And when she said that she's going to walk again, look, I want to be honest with you. I was a little kid and I didn't, at that time, I didn't understand until years later when actually somebody in my own family had to go through that. And I rewatched that and I was like, that's determination. And I showed that person that video. I will never forget it. And she was like, girl, I was alive of seeing that. So it's my great grandmother. It was my great grandmother. And just seeing that determination. And also when she got on Joshua, when Joshua and her both were going through some things, and she was learning how to walk and everybody was like, yay. And Josh is getting frustrated. And she was like, no, in a calm, motherly type way, the voice that she had was just, it was like ice cream on a hot day. It was comforting, it was smoothing. And you've always heard stories about her, about Sharita. And sometimes I always wondered, I'm like, okay, now here's the thing. She did not originate that role. There was somebody else who originated it, but she has the long tenure, right? But I often wonder, did Erna and them just say, they looked at Sharita and was like, okay, you know what? We're just going to model this character after you because you are Bert Bauer without you even knowing you're Bert Bauer. It was just the way everybody that I've ever heard talk about her, from Grant Alexander to Michael O'Leary to, to Robert Newman, they all said that. And I'm just like, this was really Bert. She was Bert. Sharita's Bert. Bert Sharita.
I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. I think it's just so amazing, God, what Sharita gave us. But anyway, go on because I'm gonna start crying.
I know I'm already there because, like I said, we always raised by strong women who watch the show. Like my connection to the show is my great grandmother, right? Who listened to it on the radio and then, was there for the transition of it to television. If she would have only known that I was so deep into this freaking show, right? Okay. But you think about how, like you said, each generation had something special with their female cast. So I'm going to have to ask the question, who that's going to cause a controversial storm? And by the way, if you're listening, we want to know your answer to this, okay? All right. Who would you consider? You got to think about everybody here. The heart, the true heart and soul of the show, other than Bert.
Oh my God, this one's hard. Other than
Bert.
Oh gosh. So honestly, if I look at like other than Bert, and I really think that for me, there is one person who it always should have been, but it was so short-sighted, and that's Maureen. Um,
Mm-hmm.
Maureen, after Bert, was certainly the heart of Guiding Light, in my opinion. So short-sighted, as we all know. I mean, and we're gonna, I'm sure, watch that episode together one day again and relive that. But Maureen really was the heart of that show, taking over for Bert. And I felt as though from Ellen Dolan to Parker, it was just an unforgettable portrayal and spirit from both of those ladies with that character. I think there are certainly other contenders. Um, there might be options I have that shock people. I think Beth is honestly a contender for that.
Mm-hmm.
I think um Lillian, even though a lot of people can't forgive Lillian for the affair, but
What?
really
Nope.
focusing
We
on
can't
that
forget
by
him.
the end of that, Tina Sloan was the longest running female cast member in terms of like not leaving her role and whatnot. Um, but yeah, I mean, to me, all roads lead back to Maureen, even with the unfortunate short-sighted killing of that character.
Matt, do you agree with
Well,
that, or do you have somebody else?
because I started watching the show late in like 2000 or 2002,
Mm,
for me it's Riva, just because at that time, especially with the 50th anniversary of the television show and how it was focused on Riva and Josh getting back together in their marriage and their wedding, it just was very Riva centric. Um, I but also to be fair, I mean she left the show for 5 years or for 4 or 5 years, and it did fine without her. But for me, because of that time period of where I started, I think it was definitely Reba. However, for a person who I think that it should also have been, or it could be, possibly could be Holly.
get out my freaking head.
I was thinking Holly as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, yeah,
Uh,
just because everything that they put that character through. And then it just seems like like the 70s and 80s, that was whenever like that was like Holly's like biggest moment. But then whenever the 90s comes along, it's sort of with the whole she's revealed to be the kidnapper, and then the 2000s, we didn't see her as much. I mean, we got glimpses, I guess. And anytime she was on the screen, I felt like she was just one of those legacy characters where it's like, oh, come on, like let's focus more on Holly. But it was sort of overshadowed by Reba, which I was okay with because that was, especially going from the mid 90s, that was definitely what the writers wanted. Yeah, one of the best, in my opinion, love triangles at that time was Annie, Joshua, and Reva.
mhm. Here's the deal. I'm I I was presented this question not too long ago, and I knew what everybody wanted me to say, but you guys both said my answer. Because no, because for me it is Maureen and Holly and it's different. Both of these women are so different. Like Casey said, each woman on this show was not cut from the same cloth. They were all individually different. They may have been, mother or daughter or sisters or twin cousins from another mother, but each woman was so different in the sense that with this question, it is kind of up for grabs. After birth, and again, everybody will say Maureen because she represented pure heart. She was a loving wife. She was a devoted mother. Look, she was so devoted that she took in another kid, okay, from her husband cheating, okay? Like, you don't get any better than that. And she loved that little girl like her own, okay? I'm just saying. Shout out to you, Michelle, okay? She was the emotional center of not only the Reardon family, come on now, but also the Bauer family. She felt like somebody you knew in real life. She grounded the show for certain, again, after, Sarita left, she had, died and everything. They were kind of, we always talk about this, like the show is going to search for another person to fill that spot. Here's the thing. I don't even think they were trying to put Maureen into that spot. It was just organic. And while others brought the drama, Reva, others brought the power, Alex, other people had the fantasy, Nola, with the drama added onto it too. She wasn't spoiled. She wasn't downright poor. She wasn't, a backstabber. She brought real life emotions and stability, and she wasn't flashy. She wasn't flashy. To me, she was the soul of Springfield. If I'm going to do it, let's do it. She was the soul of Springfield. And her death, I mean, she died in 93, right? Check this out. Show ended in 2009. The day they killed that woman off, to the very last episode, that was a death that everybody still was talking about, as if it just happened. It affected the whole show from that time frame I just gave you to now. It's been over 30 years, and we still mourn Maureen's death like this was a person we knew. Like she was, somebody's aunt. She was somebody's stepmama. She was your next door neighbor that you borrowed sugar from and never gave her the sugar back, Matt.
I don't know what you're talking about. Can I ask you both something though? And I know I'm going to be controversial when I say this, but do you think that if that death had not happened, she would have been as iconic still on the show versus being off it?
Yes.
Point blank period. Because what Guiding Light always did best was have a character like Maureen present. Going back before, there was Bert, there was Maida, there was Sarah McIntyre, there was Rita, there was Reva, like there was Holly. And what I mean by that is not necessarily the character pattern of the emotional housewife, restricted feminism. Like what I mean is they always had a defining character that a lot of stuff happened to, that you knew because of her power and her belief and her confidence as a woman, she was always going to rise above. And mark my words on this show, if that bitch Jill Farron fuck up, let me calm down, had not killed off her
We're editing
character, then it is my belief that Maureen would have been on there until the very final episode. I truly believe that. And I think, it would have been one of the best divorce storylines. I think maybe her and Ed would have gotten back together at some point. And I would think it would just create years of story for her and Lillian. It would have been so amazing. And again, I'm all for when soap operas want to do a death that shocks you. I don't mind them, but when we jump the shark and forget the heart of the show and forget why we do this show and why we need these certain characters, like Ellen Parker as Maureen when she took over for Ellen Dolan, and you have her be the face of a family that she married into, but also have her be so iconic from her Reardon beginnings. Like there was no other character that I can think of, even though there were other shocking deaths that maybe shouldn't have happened, but there was no other character I can truly think of that shouldn't have been killed off as much as Maureen.
Okay. So, real quick, let me just say this about Holly. Again, you said Maureen, and I agree with that. But Holly is also the heart of Springfield because she represented what life really is: messy, evolving, and let's be honest, this girl was always searching for something, whether it was her own identity. Because look, y'all know She was really trying to find herself. Especially when it became with Roger. She had intense relationships. Um, but sometimes, I mean, she would choose love and she would love you completely. Woo! Holly would give you her heart. She would give you the diamonds. She would give you the pearls. She would give you everything. But sometimes it was still a balance. And again, 70s, 80s, 90s. Yeah, in the early 2000s, we didn't see her a lot. But when she came back, we saw her not only still searching, but she also grew. And again, we all do that, right? We do search for something. We will try to figure everything out on a dime. We will try to fix you on a dime. She balanced, her emotions and her independence. And again, she lived in the middle of real conflict. I mean, she wasn't perfect and she wasn't reckless either. She was just human. She was she trying to be like Maureen? I mean, no. Was she trying to be like Reva? No. I mean, her biggest argument was this. If she was to be somebody different, would people accept her? And the answer was no. She tried to do this and do that, and then she lost herself, a la being a stalker. She lost herself. She then had, one of those, and we've all had this too, when something is triggered, when something triggers us, we go back into a emotional, mental thing. Hence why Sebastian. Right? We all remember that storyline. And she wanted better for her daughter. Even though her daughter slept with her man. Love you, Blake. So I don't know. Like, to me, it's a toss-up between Holly and Marie. Now, I'm going to say something. As much as I said just now, that Maureen would still be iconic. Casey, we have to kind of agree on something. And Matt, you may also agree with us. If she would have stayed alive, yes, she would still be iconic. She would still be the Burke Bauer type matriarch, long-term emotional anchor, right? She would have been a part of the major family storylines. Oh my God, can you imagine how she would have reacted to Danny and Michelle? Oh my God. Oh, help me, Jesus. She would have been there for the transitions of the generations, like Mel and Rick and Lita, how she went from 5 to being 29 years old. I'm joking. But she could have definitely grown into the heart of Springfield for decades. Now, if we're doing this, let's do it. From the early 2000s on to maybe 2007. And we saw this with Buzz, with Holly, with our vets. And even though, Maureen Reardon Bauer, right? She probably would have been one of those characters that would have been pushed back in the background. Because after, Ed left, we start seeing a shift with the Bauer family. Probably would have been losing storyline. Like, we probably would start on a Monday, wouldn't finish up until March 19th, the following year. Because of the writing shift in the later years, again, you would probably hear more about her off screen than on screen. And we saw that. So she would have been respected and she still would have been a legend. But the iconic, that word would be kind of different in a sense. So yeah. I mean, we're going to be honest. Let's be honest about it. So that's my answer, folks. Is Maureen and Holly. There you go. Let the controversy begin. Jeez.
Well, I mean, like Candace said, we want to hear from you, our listeners. And as we close out today's episode of the Guiding Light Rewatch, it's
Hold up,
impossible.
hold up, hold up, hold up. Wait. We're going overtime for a minute because I got to ask this question. Because this is really going to be, I really
Oh
want to know the
God,
answer.
this scares me though. This scares me.
Okay. So we've talked about the greats, the foundation of Springfield, Martha, Bert, going into Holly, Marie, Maureen, going into Reva, Alexandria. We even touched Dinah, right? But we're, again, Dinah, Harley, Samantha, Chelsea, Roxy, Trish, all of them, right? Mindy, all, stuff like that. The next generation of girls, of ladies. And that would be Lizzie, Daisy, Tammy, Maureen, stuff like that. Who do you think? Because I always say each decade, each era had the heart and soul. So for the next generation, the new generation, who would you have considered to be that?
Marina.
Really?
Yeah.
Said it. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
I
You gotta back it
wholeheartedly.
up.
So
But again, if we're saying it's because Springfield has had such different women. I mean, she was her mother's daughter, and Eleni was heart and soul. I mean, she was just always sweet. She was. I don't remember. I don't know if she ever had a mean bone in her body, and I think that Marina would have continued that legacy of being a matriarch for those around her, and then just because like it would be because Lizzie's like would still be have like villainous tendencies probably,
Mm-hmm.
and whereas Marina is that good girl, she could have been like a Bert or like a Marine. It's just I see it because she of where she comes from, and also the Coopers are a good family. And she would
Mm-hmm.
continue that. I could definitely see her continuing that.
So I kind of agree with you, Matt, because the one person who popped into my mind was somebody who I felt they should have tried to get back full time because honestly, I could see the heart if they would have invested more in this character past her 2006 return. I could see the heart being Mara. Um, and for me, that would be if they locked Kimberly J. Brown into like a deal to have returned to the show full time and try and keep her to stay until the final episode. Because I think, well, one, there's just something about Kimberly J. Not that like Lindsay McKeon and Laura Bell Bundy, and the other actresses didn't get the part, they did wonderful, but there's something about Kimberly to me where she had such a softness to her, but also such a understanding of soap opera and such an understanding of being Reva's daughter. And I felt as though ultimately, again, if they would have just invested more into that character, brought her back again, that could have been something really special to where I feel as though they could have leaned on Mara to turn into this heart of the show. Um, but I gotta say, since they didn't invest more in her past the 2006 return, I agree with you, Matt.
Okay. So I love both of you guys. You know that. I'm gonna have to disagree with both of you. Because
No, and
I think
it's okay to be wrong.
yes, I
I
know I'm
still
being
like
funny at the
I'm
same time. I'm
playing.
being funny. I'm
Let
being
me
shady,
stop.
so I know I'm being Alexandra Spalding. Okay. I would pick, and the reason I picked this person is because I feel as though this character was real. And it was unfortunate so my pick is Tammy. And the reason I say Tammy represented the heart and soul for the next generation is she carried emotional storytelling. Her love story with Johnson was raw. It was controversial. It was unforgettable. Unforgettable when I'm with. Okay, so we don't have the rights. It was complicated. You know, Matt, you know you was about to sing it too. And
I was not.
You was. He got it on. He got that playlist, y'all. Check it out. And
I
if you
don't.
really think about it, you know, if you think about it, Tammy, from the time we met, you know, again, little Tammy to big Tammy, she brought the same kind of emotional weight that Maureen once did, in the sense of she always looked out for everybody. She tried to do the right thing, da, da, da. And she made you feel everything. And you was like, hey, okay, that's what the heart of Springfield does. She represented love and conflict. She wasn't the good girl. She wasn't your simple good girl. Like she tried to be everything else, but she, at the end of the day, what did she want to be? Herself. She, again, like I said, she faced constant. I mean, she crushed on her stepfather, y'all. She crushed on. I mean, she was like, you know, she was a kid, you know, and she was in messy situations, and that made her feel, at that time, modern, you know, and real. But then, you know, just like with Maureen, her death happened. And again, her loss, that hit the show hard too. Like, I'm not gonna lie. Again, each era or decade a soap is on, there's always these characters that we're just like really super connected to. Like, we're just like, oh, they're finally gonna get a happy ending after all of this, and then bam, you know, something bad happens. And so again, you think about this. She risked her life for somebody that she loved. And not only that, but she also, just like Maureen, accepted a child that was not biologically hers. Because she loved Sarah too, just like Maureen loved Michelle. And if we're really going to go there, from that new era, that last potential era, her death ranks up there as a tragic moment. And if you take a look at the Guiding Light list, like, of memorable moments or like sad moments, I'm pretty sure she's like up in the top 20, Tammy's death. So for me, it's Tammy, because her story didn't just end; it stayed with you, because you really went through, just to know how she was separated, her mom, all of that. You went through it with Tammy, and when she was finally happy, we were finally like, yes, she beat all the odds. She dies. So yeah. So to me, it's Tammy. But we want to know what you guys think. Call Guiding Light's comment line at 1-800. Oh no, wrong. Okay, sorry. It's 99 cents per minute.
Was it a 1-900 number?
It was one. Yeah, it was one. Like, tell us what you think. Tell us what you think. Call the Guiding Light viewer hotline at 1-800. But not wait 1-900.
They didn't listen enough. But we'll listen to our listeners. But yes, as we close out today's episode of the Guiding Light Rewatch, it's impossible not to sit with just how much of the show's legacy was carried on the shoulders of its women. From the strength of Bert Bauer, the woman everyone turned to when life fell apart, to the complicated, messy humanity of Reva Shane, literally climbing out of fountains and back into our hearts, to Holly's fight for justice after unimaginable trauma, one of the first storylines in daytime to confront issues like marital rape head on. These weren't just stories, they were cultural moments that pushed daytime forward. And then there were the Dreamers, the romantics, women like Nola Reardon, imagining a bigger, brighter life for herself, reminding viewers that hope and fantasy could live right alongside heartbreak in Springfield. For 72 years, this show understood something so simple yet so powerful, that women's lives, their choices, their struggles, their triumphs, their tragedies, were worth telling in all their complexity. So as we say goodbye for now, we don't just remember the weddings, the betrayals, the courtroom showdowns, or even the iconic chaos. We remember the women who felt it all, and in many ways were the guiding light. Candice, my dear, where can listeners reach you in this hotline?
You can reach me at 1-800. No,
Lord.
I'm serious. Like it'd be like 1-900-846-LIGHT. I don't know. No, you guys can find me on Instagram at CandyMac82. You can find me on TikTok under the same name, and you can also find me at CandyPoo on Twitter.
And Matt, what about you, dear?
You can find me on Instagram at mprestonnyc, or you can go to my website at matthewpreston.me.
Or you can reach him at his viewer comment line.
Oh my God, we are not all getting separate. Look, we'll have separate Google phone numbers. Also, you can find me _case1999. That is on the Twitter, because yes, it's still Twitter. And we love you guys. We'll see you next time. Keep burning the light.
Bye, guys.
Bye.